Hello, everyone, and welcome to this panel on Bitcoin is for Freedom Fighters. I have the honor to be joined by three activists who are at the front lines of Bitcoin, geopolitics, and human rights. Really quickly, and this is probably the most you'll hear from me, my name is Roger. I'm the author of a book on Bitcoin in China called Would Mao Hold Bitcoin? But I want to hold space for the incredible activists that we have on this panel today. And so without further ado, would you all just introduce yourselves a little bit, your stories, and then talk a little bit about how you first discovered Bitcoin?
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm really glad to speak all of you. My name is Lyudmyla Kozlovska. I represent Open Dialogue Foundation. I'm human rights defender from Ukraine, and I'm Bitcoin advocate. Most of you have bank accounts, and imagine you under attack of three dictators who weaponize your banking data in democracies, not somewhere far away, just right at the heart of Europe. This is exactly what happened with me. Just because I was effective in defending political prisoners, people politically persecuted, three dictators get my banking data in Belgium, go after every single my donor, recipient of the fund, my family members, me, my lawyers. My lawyer in Belgium was nearly kidnapped, 3 people sentenced there. And with all of this madness, our people, for example, activists in Kazakhstan, in Moldova, were detained, interrogated, some of them tortured, some of them disappeared forever. This is how anti-money laundering regulation can be abused and how it's abused by dictators. And with all of this, I was able to resist and hold accountable all of these dictators just thanks to Bitcoin. And this is the reason why I'm defending Bitcoin in front of EU and US regulators.
Yeah, Jorge, you want to share your story?
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Lyudmyla and Anna, for being here. And thank you to everybody coming. If you are here, it's because you care about freedom, you care about your own privacy, and you care about people's autonomy. So we are on the same side of that. I come from Venezuela. So in my case, I saw firsthand how can a government literally destroy the savings of people. People that were working really hard for 50 years of their life. They saw how one government, in a few years, destroy all their savings and their hard-earned labor. Since then, I started to realize the power of financial freedom and financial empowerment. Because if you don't protect your finances, you are not protected politically, economically, and socially. I also see how Bitcoin has become a freedom technology from people all over the world, in the Middle East, in Africa, in Latin America, and that without this freedom technology, we will not be able to promote democracy in none of those countries. My goal and my objective is to bring more democracy and more prosperity to places like mine, to Venezuela. And the way to do it is with financial freedom, and the way to do that, I believe, is through Bitcoin.
Hi everyone, my name is Anna Chekhovich. I'm originally from Russia and I manage finance of the Anti-Corruption Foundation, the Russian opposition organization that was founded by the leader of Russian opposition, Alexei Navalny, and I've been working there for 7 years already. And we use Bitcoin in our work since 2016 because Russian government goes against all Russian activists, all Russian freedom fighters, and very often they use the banking system to do that. They just simply block our bank accounts. They block the bank accounts of our employees, of our legal entities. They deprive us of access to financial tools, and we just cannot operate, and we have to use Bitcoin in order to continue our fight against Russian regime. And we were labeled as an extremist organization in Russia for doing our job really well, and we had to relocate the organization from Russia to Europe, where we continue our opposition work now, but we still keep operating with Bitcoin when making transactions to Russia to support political prisoners. We make transactions in Bitcoin. We receive donations from our Russian donors also in Bitcoin, and we pay salaries to our employees in Bitcoin. And 2 years ago, I met Alex Gladstein from the Human Rights Foundation, and he explained to me that our case is not the only case, that there are so many activists, so many freedom fighters globally all over the world who are facing exactly the same problem, they're whether deprived of access to traditional currencies, or for them it's dangerous to use traditional currencies. And many of them rely on Bitcoin in their work. And that is why I decided to join the Human Rights Foundation, and I started working with the Human Rights Foundation 5 months ago. At the Human Rights Foundation, I'm a nonprofit Bitcoin adoption lead. I educate other nonprofits, freedom fighters, how to implement Bitcoin in their work, because we see that demand for that is growing. Today, there is 73% of population of this planet living under authoritarian regimes, and so many people really need these tools in order to keep operating, to keep fighting against authoritarian regimes. And I'm there to help them, to share my experience from the Anti-Corruption Foundation, and to help to fight against this global evil.
So 3 powerful stories, and I just wanted to ask, because all 3 of you have a lot of experience talking to policymakers, advocating. What do you think? We're sharing this conference with a lot of American policymakers. What do you think policymakers should know the most about the work that you all are doing, and how would you kind of convey your message to them?
So every time I meet with regulators and legislators from US, we actually met for the last 2 years over 300 members of the different parliaments of 46 member states. And I think, do you know how actually abuse AML, anti-money laundering regulation? So 3 dictators announced me as a threat to national security. And I'm just one example how, again, through this abuse of anti-money laundering counterterrorism regulation, they were able to get my banking data, go after me. And I'm, from one side, accused being threat to national security for my human rights work. From other side, I'm national interest in such countries like Belgium, France, Germany. Presidents of these countries defend me. And with all of this support, with support of the parliaments, governments, I was not able to protect my banking data. And I'm asking politicians, do you think, guys, there exist any remedies? What differs me from you? You today, government representatives, tomorrow you are opposition. Your banking data is going to be the same weaponized like mine. Just the difference between us, I'm aware about it, and you are not. And you vote for this. And we bring examples how activists like Anna, like Jorge, it's our Building to Change coalition. We created a coalition of people who are financially excluded. We go to every single member of the parliament and regulators explaining our cases, how we financially excluded. And as Anna said, majority of the countries in the world financially actually repressive, because dictators use financial institutions as a weapon against their citizens. They control it completely. And this is the reason why when we speak about sanctions policy, we say no one from dictators needs any Bitcoin, any crypto assets, because they control entire financial system. This is how sanctions actually circumvented. So it's easier for us to defend Bitcoin in this regard. From other side, we have challenges. We need to have industry representatives on our side. And this is something what we are missing. Here in US, you have like huge variety of organizations defending Bitcoin industry, freedom technology. Where I'm based in Brussels, in Belgium, in European countries, almost no one have this attitude to defend freedom technology in front of regulators. And this is the reason why I'm inviting every of you to be a part of our coalition and help us to defend freedom of communication, encryption, or freedom of transaction, freedom of payment. We can do it together. We're doing it also regularly, attending this kind of meetings and defending resolutions, but we lack of support from industry representatives. So join us, and I'm really happy to make these changes happen.
Jorge, any thoughts here?
Yes. Basically, in order to keep advancing our ideas and our technology, we need to talk to policymakers, and we need to also talk to activists. In the case of policymakers, we need to make sure that we don't have an environment, a regulatory environment that is hostile to the technology, hostile from a political perspective and from an economic perspective. This is why we go and we do the work of talking to policymakers. This year we have met with the Treasury Department, State Department, US Senate, and US Congress, and the Financial Action Task Force. We do this because we explain to them. In my case, I bring young voices. I bring young lawyers, economists, activists, people who are entrepreneurs, international entrepreneurs, especially from emerging markets. And we tell them, from an economics perspective, Bitcoin is a technology that will bring so much innovation, productivity growth. It will develop new spaces for innovation and investment opportunities, which is something that we desperately need in the US, in Western Europe, etc. And from a political perspective, what we tell them is that all their efforts to promote a more market-friendly world, a more politically democratic world, all these objectives that all of these people share, they should and they must be accomplished through Bitcoin technology. Because if you're an activist in Venezuela or in Russia, you don't have financial instruments. You are somebody who cannot access banks, because banks are often in collusion with regimes. And even if you're an activist in exile, as the case of Lyudmyla, you are often deprived of financial services. So Bitcoin has become a lifeline of opportunity for people like us who fight for a more democratic, market-friendly society. And policymakers, when we come from this perspective, we are not lobbyists, we don't represent industry. What we represent is human rights, is freedom, and in my case, young people. We required and we demand a different kind of future. We cannot live in a country or in a world in which regulators want to regulate everything. These societies do not produce prosperity, do not produce freedom. And young people, we want to be entrepreneurs, we want to start families, we want to have a house, and the way to do it is allowing us to innovate. So that's what I tell them, and that's what we believe.
Anna, I'd love to ask a little bit. We're going to kick off the next question and talk about privacy tooling and really the impact of KYC AML regulations on that. But I'd love to dig a little bit deeper into the privacy tooling that you use, but also what happened with the Anti-Corruption Foundation. I mean, this was, as you put it, deemed an extremist organization. So how were you able to effectuate Bitcoin payments while protecting the privacy of your donors?
Yeah, this is a very important question because we started receiving Bitcoin donations, and we eventually realized that just receiving Bitcoin donations is not enough for providing a safe way of donations for our donors. Because just donating to us will put our donors at risk of being imprisoned up to 8 years because we're labeled as an extremist organization on territory of Russia. So if a Russian donor donates anything to us, if that donor is tracked by the government, the donor will be arrested. And we put our donors at a huge risk if we don't provide them with privacy tools. And just donating Bitcoin is not enough because blockchain is transparent and I cannot control which platforms our donors use. If they go somewhere where they leave their personal data, it's super dangerous. So it's our responsibility on our side as an organization to implement some tools that will protect our donors anyway. If they use KYC platforms or non-KYC platforms, we don't know. So we should provide some security anonymous tools that will provide anonymity for our donors. And these privacy tools is a crucial part of our work when accepting Bitcoin donations. And all donations from Russia, for example, to our organization go in Bitcoin, and it is extremely important to do it very safely. And we, for example, we implemented a button, a Bitcoin addresses generator on our website, which provides a new Bitcoin address every single time for each donation. So it's harder for the government to track the donors. But still, it's not enough. If anyone who wants to track the donor is more advanced and understands the technology, they can still track the donors. So in our work, we also use CoinJoin, which is super important. With this tool, we can provide the extra layer of safety for the donors. But with the recent use of government starting going against those who create these tools, this is a very bad news for people like us. But I understand why governments do that. They want full transparency and full control over all financial transactions, over all payment systems. But when banning those tools, when attacking those founders of those platforms, they actually damage people like us, first of all, because we fully rely on that, and someone's lives rely on that if someone is caught by the government and they go to prison just because we're deprived of these tools. So this is very important, but unfortunately, those policymakers, they don't take us into consideration. And I had experience traveling with Lyudmyla, talking to all of those decision makers, and that was sometimes it was ridiculous that we were talking about Bitcoin with those people who regulate Bitcoin, and they ask us, but by the way, how Bitcoin looks like, I don't even know how, can you show me Bitcoin? I don't know what it is. And those people make decisions related to Bitcoin, which is completely insane. So yeah, we should educate them, and we should talk about the importance of privacy tools for activists. First of all, it's very important.
It's so fascinating to see the samurai case and the global implications of that. I think people just don't know that enough. Jorge and Luda, what are your thoughts on sort of the impact of KYC AML regulations and the privacy tooling that you all use that is essential to your work?
So I would say one simple example, because I like to speak with regulators an example. What Anna said, that most of people in privacy, of course, in private meetings, it's not like on the hearing in the European Parliament or Italian Senate, someone asks us, can you show me Bitcoin? It actually happens during private meetings, face-to-face meetings, and we need to conduct this kind of educational meetings so they can ask these silly questions. Because no one is asking silly questions until you understand technology. Problem why we actually losing this friendly environment for regulation, because majority of politicians have no clue what they regulate. And we need, it's our obligation, I think, to come and to help to understand it. And it's not just words. We used to have majority of European Parliament supported all of our amendments in anti-money laundering regulation, recognizing crypto assets as a payment instrument and crowdfunding instruments, protection also of banking and financial data, crypto asset services provided data. But we lost these amendments this year after Senator Warren basically put pressure on one of special rapporteurs, like put pressure, they shared experience, it's called like this. And then majority of our amendments were unfortunately erased. Why? Because during this silence process in the European Parliament, there was no opinion also of privacy and developers, Bitcoin miners, who can defend technology. This is the reason why we created this Building to Change coalition. We bring these voices of Bitcoin miners, developers, because we believe that Bitcoin is human rights. Human rights is people who actually building this important tool. You cannot defend these human rights if you don't defend people who standing behind of this technology. And for this reason, we believe that anti-money laundering regulations, cybersecurity treaty regulation, they have to take into account all of these use cases like us, because we examples, very well documented examples, what could happen with every of us. Because those treaties treat all of us equally. They treat equally financial institutions of authoritarian states and democracies, and it gives enormous access. For this reason, we defend mixers, we defend privacy payment instruments. We blocked right now in EU, together with local Bitcoiners and activists, and I call you to also join our coalition to do the same here in US. Chat control regulation, which put intermediary in encryption between messengers and emails. We need to do this kind of work and protect freedom tools. Otherwise, no one is going to do this work of us. So we want to establish Freedom Technology Embassy in Belgium, in Brussels, so we can effectively in the entire EU, but also have supportive impact for US jurisdiction as the biggest market in the world, defend these freedom tools. So all of us in Russia, in Venezuela, in Ukraine, in many other countries can use these freedom tools as end users safely.
Something that I think most people need to understand about all these regulations who are meant to tackle financial crime is that they do not apply, or they have all these unintended consequences for people coming from countries like us. If you are an immigrant, for example, who come from a place like Venezuela, you cannot meet these severe standards that financial institutions are imposing. If you are, for example, a person working in a very rural area that does not have too much documentation, for example, then banks will not want you as a client because you don't meet these standards. If you are an immigrant, if you're a small business doing international trade in Latin America, so all these standards work in developed countries and with very specific part of society, but with vulnerable groups, people who come from developing countries, human rights activists, something that I want you to understand is that these regulations end up having enormous consequences for people like us. And if you cannot innovate, if you cannot be an entrepreneur, if you cannot even own a bank account, How can we expect these people to build prosperous life? How can we expect these people to become productive members of society? This is what, for example, we tell people who care about economic performance, economic development, because we all want that. We want societies in which people are empowered. So what we are specifically asking for is, let's have not these regulations, but let's have appropriate legal framework that is conducive to freedom and innovation. Let's put freedom at the center of every law, of every resolution. Because if we try to over-regulate people's life, if we try to over-regulate the market, we know how that translates. And that translates into more poverty, into more stagnation, and into more authoritarianism. We want the opposite. We want more freedom and more prosperity.
Some powerful statements here on how to change the tide of rising authoritarianism from three people at the very front lines. My final question for you all, and we can start with Anna and then kind of go in, is how can Bitcoiners support the work that you're doing, and what can be done?
I mean, we fully depend on Bitcoin, and sometimes when people ask me, like, what would you do if there was not Bitcoin existing? And I used to say, I have no idea. I have no idea. So we rely on Bitcoin so much. I cannot even imagine what we're going to do without it. And I would use my time just to say a final message. I believe that the work that Lyudmyla is doing when reaching the government's decision makers is a very important work, but it takes so much time and so much effort. Unfortunately, I don't have this optimism, and I prefer to address my messages to the developers, because I believe that all the governments, not only oppressive regimes, as we can see here, like democratic countries also want to control the banking system, want to control all financial tools. So my message would be for developers, keep doing your work, keep creating tools for us, because as you can see, we literally depend on what you do. And even if you see that governments go against the tools, please be brave and remember about people like us. We really depend, and some people's lives depend on the tools that you create for us. Thank you.
My message for the people who are listening to us is that, yes, developers are extremely important. Entrepreneurs are extremely important. Activists are extremely important. People with political voice are extremely important. The ways that we can build societies, the way that we can build sustainable societies, is when every person in their own capability, in their own sector, does the best they can to support our cause of a freedom society. This means that entrepreneurs have to be committed to our cause. What I mean committed, I not only mean about donations or financial support. I mean being with us, coming to the meetings, brainstorm with us. Let's get your expertise and let's include it in our procedures and in our actions. Same with people at the cutting edge of technology, like developers. Give us these tools to fight back. And the same goes with artists. Produce music, create, so that we can sell our message better. Young people who want a better future, come to us also so they can all work together from different sides, from different expertise towards the same mission. This is the only way to win. We are fighting against a big enemy. People who hate freedom, people who hate prosperity, people who want to regulate everything. We have to be as connected as possible and as committed as possible. So we need all of you.
All right, Luda, giving you the final, sorry, there wasn't as much time, but giving you as much as you can.
Yeah, I just want to thank to everyone, developers and Bitcoin miners, because without you guys, I would not be sitting even here. I would probably dead. It's no joke. So when I say that Bitcoin for me, it's a life and death, I'm never joking. And I know that it's not the case for many, for thousands, at least thousands of my activists in Central Asian countries, in Turkey, and many other countries whom I have privilege to represent in front of regulators. And I also represent you guys, even if you don't know about my existence, because I strongly believe, no matter, sometimes we with Anna have different opinions, it's fine. We all have our rights to have opinions. that developers cannot develop if they're going to be arrested, because you would not get funding from investors, you would not get an ability to function in society. For this reason, I strongly believe we have to do without all privileges, because we live in Western countries, which is bubble, small bubble, to defend our basic freedom technology. Right now, it's the only technology of free money, Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, again, it's developers, it's miners, it's investors, and only then end users. Without you guys, we not exist. Thank you.
Bitcoin is freedom money, and that's a wrap.
Thank you.